In 2021, a studio was formed to make a game about the Black Panther, an original hero that has massive popularity, whose movie is still one of the best-selling non-Avengers superhero movies. A character who did not need to take the mantle from another hero, did not need to be a swap of another, did not need some other hero to prop him up. Black Panther is a great hero who can carry a solo movie and easily a standalone game. The mission was simple. Take a huge amount of money, have a popular IP, take talented employees handpicked by one of the gaming's most largest corporations. Anyone could turn this golden opportunity into a golden moneymaker. Game has been cancelled. 4 years and they were still in pre-production. Let us repeat that because it is peak performance from the professional AAA games industry. 4 years and they were still in pre-production. This SBI-infested game spent 4 years doing absolutely nothing. To put this into perspective, since the journalists are already running damage control for their beloved consultant firm, this started development shortly after Clair Obscur started development. Is this not the perfect side-by-side between AAA and indie? Let's just repeat that one more time. 33 developers made what is likely the 2025 Game of the Year for at most a quarter of the budget and no major corporate backing. In the same time, it took for this activist consultant supported studio to go from pre-production for a franchise that has already been developed for them for decades to still being in pre-production. They can't even make a Black Panther game. This is embarrassing. They spend so much time and effort on getting major franchises. There's a Wonder Woman game, a Wolverine game, a Blade movie, Iron Man game, an unannounced game, all either canceled or silent for years, in the hope that you never noticed it got canceled. And this is the state of superhero hype right now. Fans are so alienated, they have lost interest. When that Coruscant, dark, gritty Star Wars game 1313 was canceled, people were furious. Because they still cared enough about the IP. The fans were still invested. People were on their seats for Duke Nukem Forever for, well, ever. Technically, it was 14 years. If an MCU or Star Wars project gets cancelled, you will never know unless they make a point to tell you. They took their fans for granted, or even worse, they mistreated and insulted their fans for over a decade. But at least they acquired the new, coveted modern audience fans. The fans that do not care, do not buy, do not watch, do not play, and no matter how much you cater to them, you are always one wrong pronoun away from being burned at the cancel culture stake for heresy. We will be repeating this story in a year or two about the Blade movie that's been in production for half a decade. The predicted sweet baby ink death kiss strikes again. The group known for injecting propaganda into everything cannot figure out how to make a Black Panther game. A game you would think is right up their alley. But it just wasn't enough. Reality is, Black Panther is a good role model for men. He is a masculine man, positive personality traits, he looks cool, and much to the anger of these activists, he has a multicultural fan base. That's a problem for woke priests whose entire life revolves around misandry and the complete hatred of men. Furthermore, Wakanda is an ultra-nationalist ethno-state. It has unbelievable levels of wealth, power, and technology, all due to the luck of having the wonder mineral vibranium. Now, for most people, this makes for a cool character, a great power fantasy. This is peak comic book hero stuff. In many ways, he's similar to Iron Man, Batman, someone in a position of great power and wealth who uses that to save people. This is something the average comic book fan, the average man, absolutely loves and won't think about through the lens of intersectional victim Olympics. And there's a problem. This cult of professional victim-centric Karens do not want to tell the story about a black man in a position of extreme privilege because their belief system tells them people of color are only permitted to exist in a position that is lower to themselves in a strict hierarchy of power struggle. At the same time, they are not allowed to tell a story about a man who is heroic, masculine, and wholly good because that same indoctrination tells them a men automatically means evil. However, they cannot tell a story about this specific man being evil due to the race. Can you see where this logic loop is going right now? Basically nowhere, just like this game. Again, this is why they can't write Blade either. And going forward, any Blade or Black Panther related products absolutely require that a female takes over the story, such as a daughter, sister, protege, anyone to cleanse a series of the heresy of masculinity. If these cultists happen to handle the conundrum of balancing their racial fetishist worship with their deep-rooted bigotry towards masculinity incorrectly, they risk genuine excommunication from their cult, and with that, cancellation from the industry their cult has taken over. And if you're thinking to yourself, this sounds absolutely crazy, yes, it is crazy. To them, all people are a collection of immutable characteristics that take complete precedence over anything else, like personality or who they are inside. These are the people who do not judge a cover by its book. Is SBI to blame, or is it the studio that lets them in? Well, if your house floods every time it rains, is the rain to blame, or is it the shoddy house construction? The answer is both. The entire reason they supposedly exist is to help games like these be made, and there's a reason it's called the SBI Touch of Death. They ruin everything they are involved with, and now their games aren't even making it to release. It needs to be said again, this game spent 4 years in pre-production. That is unacceptable. But that is why journalists are now crying about deprofessionalization. As their corporate backers continue to do this, while Indie and AA are making the likes of Clair Obscur with a tiny fraction of the support. The deprofessionalization, though, is not happening due to AAA layoffs and constant failing projects, as is being reported. The deprofessionalization of the games industry started in the early 2010s. It started when professional developers were replaced with activists, when respect for the franchise, video games, and gamers was replaced with unprofessional attacks from media, and the constant preaching and pushing of ideology from corporate game-making employees. We all saw activists attack the pillars of major franchises visibly. Toxic masculine male role models were emasculated. Beautiful female co-protagonists in games were covered up, their curves were straightened, their faces androgenized. Stories of heroism and action were replaced with guilt-laden political propaganda as game characters sit around talking about their feelings instead. However, at the same time, they were doing far more irreparable damage behind the scenes. They were pushing out and blacklisting talented, experienced developers who were problematic. They were replacing them with activists who hate the audience. They were injecting social conditioning into the systemic framework of studios. They ironically proved that systemic racism and sexism will destroy an industry by forcing systemic racism and sexism into the industry and promptly causing dozens of decades-old gaming franchises and studios to fall to ruin. When you put a bunch of people who cannot act like professionals on a project, big shock, they cannot do what the profession entails. Here's a fact. If this game was being made by the problematic, toxic masculine, so-called racist gaming developers of the Super Nintendo to PS2 era, it would have come out with an effort. Maybe it would have been Silver Surfer or Superman 64, or maybe it would have been closer to the likes of X-Men Legends, Marvel vs. Capcom, or Turtles in Time. Not every game is a winner. But great or terrible, you would not have had aggressive so-called professionals calling the fans names, and the fan reception would be about how great or terrible the game plays and how authentic it is to the comics. That is what activists fought to end. And this is the AAA industry we have been left with. A AAA industry where they get paralyzed in the development phase, an industry where they cannot create or innovate, an industry where their activism divides fans and floods beautiful entertainment hobbies with toxic activism. Games like this, where they get their foot in the door, fill the studio with people who mirror their beliefs but have no actual game development talent. They likely spent over $100 million to not make this game, and if AAA is going to look at this and refuse to change course, perhaps we should celebrate this burning train heading for its next broken bridge. But what about you? Do you think for a 6-figure salary, you could do the same? If you were given 4 years, could you manage to not make a video game? Leave a comment, like and subscribe, and look forward to yet more corporate malpractice coming soon.